The president of Ukraine urgently summoned the general staff because of the situation on the front. President Zelensky announced that Ukraine shot down a Russian Su-35 fighter. Israel announced that it would not make concessions, despite the hostage exchange agreement. Former President Trump quietly tried to choose his deputy. The president of Ukraine urgently summoned the general staff because of the situation on the front. British expert Alexander Merkouris said on his YouTube blog that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky urgently gathered high-ranking military personnel from the general staff because of the situation of the armed forces of Ukraine at the front. The analyst stated, President Zelensky convened the entire general staff and ordered the army to hold their positions at any cost, not to retreat anymore. As Merkouris noted, the situation of the armed forces of Ukraine is extremely difficult and the Russian offensive is gaining momentum. According to him, after a series of serious defeats in Kiev, the West began to demand that the Ukrainian leadership prevent the collapse of the front. The Russian army, after defeating the advancing forces of the armed forces of Ukraine last summer and fall, then launched several sensitive counterattacks against the enemy and moved forward, resolving launch Donbas, Pervomaisko, Bogdanovka, Novomykhailovka, Novobakhmutovka, and a number of other settlements. The Russian army is also expanding its control areas in Berdikai and Georgievka. President Zelensky announced that Ukraine shot down a Russian Su-35 fighter. The Ukrainian military announced that it had shot down a Russian Su-35S in the southern province of Kherson, but it is possible that the plane was mistakenly shot down by its teammates. The Air Defense Missile Unit of the Ukrainian Air Force shot down a Russian fighter, believed to be the Su-35S model, in the Novokakhovka area in Kherson province on the morning of July 19 when it was trying to attack Ukraine. Photos at the scene confirmed that the plane was shot down and the pilot parachuted, the Ukrainian Air Force Command said in a statement. Video shared on social networks shows the plane catching fire, falling to the ground and exploding, but the type and operating force are unknown. A parachute believed to be controlled by the pilot descended nearby, before a Mi-24/35 armed helicopter swarmed the scene. The Russian Ministry of Defense has not commented on the information. However, some accounts supporting the Russian military campaign on the Telegram application said that the country's plane was mistakenly shot down by teammates, not shot down by Ukrainian air defense. If confirmed, this will be the second accidental shooting of a Russian aircraft in the past few days, after a suspected Su-34M was shot down by its teammates in the eastern province of Lugansk. The Ukrainian army in early April also announced that it had shot down a Russian Su-35S fighter and released images of the plane crashing in the northeastern province of Kharkov. This appears to be the first Russian Su-35S fighter to crash since Moscow launched its military campaign in Ukraine. The Su-35 is a Russian 4++ generation fighter, highly maneuverable and equipped with many modern electronic devices. The Russian Air Force began operating the Su-35S series in 2013. This force is operating 103 aircraft and has ordered 29 more aircraft. The Su-35S is the most modern main fighter of the Russian army today, in the context that only 3 Su-57s have been delivered and have not yet performed combat missions. Russia has controlled Kherson province, southern Ukraine, since mid-March. The region's leaders appointed by Moscow say they may hold a referendum on annexing Russia in the second half of this year. Ukrainian forces launched counterattacks in Kherson since May, retaking control of some villages, but not entering large-scale towns. Israel announced that it would not make concessions, despite the hostage exchange agreement. Sources said the release of hostages being held by Hamas forces will not affect Israel's plans in the Gaza Strip. Journalist Suleiman Maswade cited an anonymous political source in the Israeli government on May 4 as saying, contrary to reports, Israel will under no circumstances agree to end the war as a part of the agreement to release our detainees. Furthermore, the unnamed official said that Israel's political leadership had decided that the Israel Defense Forces, IDF, will enter Rafah and wipe out the remaining Hamas battalions there, even if there is time, pause to release our hostages or not. The city of Rafah, located in southern Gaza near the border with Egypt, is currently home to about 1.4 million Palestinians who have fled northern Gaza. Besides carrying out continuous airstrikes against Hamas targets in the city, the Israeli government also threatened to launch a ground attack in the area, despite opposition from the US and United Nations. Masweda's information coincides with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's statement earlier this week that the Israeli army would enter Rafah regardless of whether a ceasefire and hostage release agreement with Hamas was reached or not. The idea that we will stop the war before achieving all our goals is impossible. We will enter Rafah and eliminate the Hamas battalions there, with or without an agreement, to achieve complete victory, Netanyahu said. Last week, Israel officially sent Hamas a ceasefire proposal, which proposed a halt to fighting activities to facilitate the exchange of dozens of Israeli hostages captured by Hamas for Palestinian prisoners being held in Israeli prisons. This proposal was described by U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken as extremely generous. He urged Hamas to decide quickly and make the right decision. U.S. President Joe Biden also asked Israel to improve humanitarian conditions in Gaza and work towards a ceasefire, saying U.S. support could depend on this. Meanwhile, Hamas has demanded a permanent ceasefire and the withdrawal of all Israeli troops from Gaza. In recent months, Israel has focused its attacks on southern Gaza. Fighting between the two sides broke out last October after Hamas attacked an area controlled by Israel, killing 1,200 people and taking 250 hostage. Israel retaliated, killing 33,100 Palestinians, most of whom were civilians. Former President Trump quietly tried to choose his deputy. Mr. Trump's campaign is quietly screening deputy candidates, while the former president feels there is no need to rush to announce a running mate. Mr. Donald Trump qualified to become the Republican candidate for president in March, after overwhelmingly winning a series of primary elections in the states, causing his opponents to drop out one by one. But Trump does not seem to be in a hurry to choose a running mate, even though the deputy candidate may be a constant presence on the racetrack, conveying his campaign message while he is in court in New York. "I will choose, but not too early before the Republican National Convention, RNC, Mr. Trump said in an interview in Wisconsin on May 1. This year's RNC is held in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on July 15 to 18. Normally, the vice presidential candidate will speak to delegates the evening before the event ends. In 2016, Mr. Trump chose as his running mate Mike Pence, then the governor of Indiana, in the week immediately before the RNC took place. In addition to Wisconsin, Mr. Trump on May 1 also went to Michigan to campaign. The former president won these two battleground states in 2016, but then lost to opponent Joe Biden in 2020. This is the first time Trump has returned to the racetrack since the Manhattan Criminal Court on April 15 began his trial. Accused of falsifying business records to spend money to hide unfavorable information when running for election in 2016. The trial process lasts at least 6 weeks and Trump must be present in court 4 working days per week, except Wednesdays, significantly wasting the former president's time. However, the former president said the New York lawsuit did not cause him to speed up the process of finding a running mate. Mr. Trump's team has not yet completed the first phase of screening a potential vice presidential candidate, 7 sources familiar with the matter told NBC News. Top candidates have not received survey questions or requests for information. Some speculation suggests that Mr. Trump is evaluating the candidate's fundraising ability. Mr. Trump has not yet reviewed the list of potential candidates, as he did for many weeks in 2016 before choosing Mr. Pence. Many candidates will join Mr. Trump at a fundraising event this weekend in Palm Beach, Florida. This can be considered a screening session. "Everything has been going quietly for a while," an advisor to Mr. Trump said when asked about the search for a deputy candidate. A source familiar with the matter said Mr. Trump's campaign team has not yet had direct contact with the candidates, but has learned thoroughly about them.